College basketball now. Tough blow to BYU's hopes of making a deep run in the NCAA tournament. The number 3 Cougars dismissing starting forward Brandon Davies from the team for the remainder of the season, citing a violation of the school's honor code. The sophomore started 26 of 29 games this year. Now, Jimmer Fredette gets most of the publicity, and rightfully so, but Davies, pivotal player, arguably the Cougars' second best player on this team. He leads the team in rebounds at over 6 a game and is their third leading scorer with 11 points per game. Joining us now is ESPN NFL analyst Steve Young, who is one of the most decorated athletes ever at BYU. Steve, tell us about the honor code at BYU. What is that like? Me being a Mormon, it's kind of how you live anyway, so it's not a problem. But I think the big issues are drinking and obviously drugs and tobacco, but also just generally an idea that you're going to live a chaste life, which is no premarital sex. So there's a lot of things that are not really normal, maybe out in the world, but for BYU. But once you get there, it becomes just kind of part of the life, and so I think the honor code feels like something that's not necessarily easy to live, but for me certainly didn't seem to be a burden. So, Steve, you think even in this day and age, once athletes are immersed in that culture, you tell us, how difficult is it for college-age athletes in this age to live that way? Yeah, well, look, it's all about choices that you make. There's no bait and switch here. Bronco Mendenhall, as a head football coach, Dave Rose is a basketball coach. These guys recruit off of the honor code. There's just BYU. It's been a long-standing tradition of BYU. Not tradition is the wrong word, but it's the standard for 50, 100 years. And so it's not like people come and don't understand what it is. And when they're recruited, they're told about it and that's why I'm sure Brandon, a great guy, I'm sure today is like, geez, I didn't live up to it, and so now I got to pay the price for it. Steve, is it letter of the law, or what is there any flexibility? My experience, Brian, is that it's the spirit of it more than anything, and there's an effort, I think, on everyone's part to make sure that people give their best efforts. If mistakes are made, they try to fix it and figure it out, and if they can't, then obviously with this situation, the people, hundreds of thousands of non-Mormons have gone through BYU successfully. So it's like it gets worked out. But if things happen that just can't get worked out, then the BYU is very serious about it, and for good reason. Theologically, some of these things are just very at the core of the religion, and I think that's why it's such an important thing and a sacred thing in many ways. Steve, you follow this basketball team very closely. Davies is the third leading scorer on the team. How big of a loss? What's the impact going to be on the floor? I think that this team has proven over this season that they've gotten some big moments and answered the call every time. So as a group, this is the kind of locker room that seems like that's capable, like the Packers did this year with injuries and different things that happen. Sometimes there's a group of guys that just they rally and they close ranks and can get better. So I don't know that for sure, but I'm hopeful that BYU can move on and still fulfill their destiny here, which I thought was going to be deep into this tournament. All right, former BYU star Steve Young. Steve, good talking to you. Thank you so much. All right, thanks, Brian. Take care. All right, let's take a look at the rest of BYU's schedule. The Cougars have just 2 remaining regular games against tonight at home against New Mexico, wrapping up the regular season Saturday against Wyoming before going to the Mountain West Conference Tournament in Las Vegas next week.
With more on this story, we bring in ESPN's college basketball analyst Jay Billis. Billis, who joins us now on SportsCenter. And Jay, what does the loss of Brandon Davies mean to this BYU team?
Linda, I think it really hurts. Brandon's a really good athlete that can run. He can block and change shots. He rebounds pretty well. And he did a really good job of finishing plays. So to have a finisher there, I think any time you're gonna be successful in the NCAA tournament, you've got to be able to score in the post and guard in the post. And that takes away really I think their second best scorer on the team. They've got other guys that can score, but he's their best interior scorer. And so I think it's a huge blow to BYU and their chances in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, their hopes of a #1 seed now in jeopardy. There were hopes about that. Where do you expect the Cougars to go from here now?
Well, I think they're gonna have to make some significant changes, but I think when you get to tournament time, the idea that you're just going to speed up play is hard to fathom, because already BYU is an up-tempo team. They're in the top 20 in possessions per game. They're one of the fastest playing teams in the country, and when you get to tournament time, it's a lot easier to slow a game down than speed one up. So it winds up being more of a half-court game. And I think it's going to be really difficult for them from a depth standpoint, and also to be able to cover some of the big guys they're going to have to play without him there. Now, what the committee does is always an open question, because these are subjective determinations. If BYU loses a couple ball games, their seed may drop down to 2 or 3. Who knows? But the truth is, regardless of their seed, they're going to have to play when they get there, and this is going to affect their level of play. It's not quite as bad as in 2000 when Cincinnati lost Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin was the National Player of the Year. They still have a National Player of the Year, perhaps the Player of the Year, but a candidate certainly in Jimmer Fredette. He's more important than Brandon Davies, but Brandon Davies was one of their top 3 players, and I think their second key, because he was their number 1 inside presence.
These players, we forget sometimes, Jay, are so young. If you're the coach of this team, or if you're in this locker room, what do you tell these kids as they move forward?
I think you have to tell them just that, Linda. You say, we're moving on. And a lot of players, they talk about wanting an opportunity. Well, now they have one. And so there are other players that have been preparing themselves to step in. Would they feel better about this if it were an injury or something? You have to be prepared to step forward and play. And there would have been games, or a game where maybe Brandon Davies were in foul trouble, or if he did get injured. This is a problem of his own making, which makes it a little more difficult to deal with. But it's happened before where teams have lost players and they've been able to pick up the slack, and everybody doing more. And so I think that's the message, is that they've got players that are prepared to play, and they need to go out and play. And Tom Izzo has said this for years. Players play and tough players win. And we'll find out how tough BYU is going forward.
Those are the thoughts of Jay Billis on the dismissal of Brandon Davies at BYU. Thank you, Jay.
I want to ask you about Brigham Young right now, Dick. Their NCAA title hopes took a serious hit with the loss of forward Brandon Davies, the team's 3rd leading scorer, dismissed for the rest of the season. How big a blow is this for the Cougars?
Jay, anytime you lose a key player at this time of the year, you talk about chemistry, you talk about rhythm, you talk about a guy that is valuable, averaging 11 points a game. He rebounds. He gives them plus minutes defensively. You take that out of your lineup, it's got to hurt. I think right now it would slot him in as a number 1 seed, but now without Davies, I think it could cost them a number 1 seed. The selection committee certainly will look at that, and I don't think they'll be as effective. Where I thought they would run the table now going into the NCAA tournament, I think now it could be a little danger time, especially when they get into that tournament in the league conference tournament. So again, losing a play like Davies, very, very important at this time of the year. You don't have much time to really get players, to get a new player out there playing in terms of being uniformity involved with them offensively, defensively. So I think that this is a major loss to BYU.